In the Anton conference call we did a couple of weeks ago, we got into a conversation about what it is that we as metaphysicians, as practitioners of healing prayer, do that is helpful, and also the things we do that are not helpful. And one of the things that Martha Creek pointed out, and she's just a wonderfully well-spoken, completely blunt, in-your-face minister, she pointed out that metaphysical malpractice is possible. And she realized that she'd been doing it for part of her career. So that one of the things that she shared is when somebody comes and tells us about a problem, a situation, a difficulty that they're dealing with, and we say, oh, it's all good, that's malpractice. Because the fact of the matter is, whoever it is that came and told us that story is going through something. And by just dismissing them and saying, oh, it's all good, we take away their opportunity to go through the process and find whatever the good is in that situation so they can have something to grow into. So, it's all good. Here's good news. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to get to see the halftime show at the Super Bowl tonight. The Patriots and the Falcons will not, because they're playing. Don't go and find an eagle and say, it's all good, because they might be a little pissy about it. And if we insist that we jump over the parts that are uncomfortable to the parts that are all good, then we miss the opportunity for growth. Life tends to divvy itself up into experiences of joy and opportunities for growth. That's very simplistic. That's amazingly simplistic. But if you think about it, there are times when you're just feeling joyous and wonderful, and this is great. This is wonderful. I want to have more of this. This is what I want to have in my life. And then there are times when we're looking for the good. It's like, I don't know where the good is in this. I don't know what the happy part of this is. It's where my favorite quote from Emma Curtis Hopkins comes in. This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me now. And I demand to see the blessing in it. Because sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes we need to go looking underneath the furniture, the scenery in the caves someplace to find the good. And big picture, yeah, there's always good. That's the upward spiral of evolution. Even the really horrible things that have happened in the history of our planet. And by the way, I'm talking about the extinction level events where the asteroids came in and obliterated all Earth on the planet. Probably was an uncomfortable day for a lot of the participants. And it would have really been bad as fires raining down from the sky to tell the dinosaurs, oh, it's all good. But that was a step that brought us further along in the progress, which brought us to here. So the gift is right here. The gift is right now. So that's what we get to turn our attention to when things are not working the way that we want them to be working. And there's always the invitation to turn away from the situation that's in front of us, that we're looking at, the fact that's looking us in the face, and know something better. Margaret Mead said, the only thing that ever changed the planet is the intentionality of a small group of people, sometimes just one person. That's where it starts. There was the Women's March in Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago. One of the signs that I saw, which was great, is, I can't believe we still have to march for this stuff. Mm-hmm. It didn't say stuff. And on the one hand, it's kind of funny. And on the other hand, it's kind of sad that we still have to be marching for this stuff. But the important takeaway that I have for that is this stuff really important? Well, yeah, it was to her, was to me, was to the 50,000 people who were there. So why not be willing to take that step, to go on that march, to look at the situation and say, this is what I want to have in my world. Yeah, it'd be nice if we were done with it. It'd be nice if the evolutionary spiral were just upwards and it were all joyous experiences and there was no growth opportunities, nothing to learn. But that's not the way it works. In the very beginning of the Bible, it says, in the beginning there was darkness and void, stillness upon the face of the deep. Actually, I just reread the beginning of Genesis again, and either they're looping through the story multiple times or it doesn't make any sense at all. But the key part, the infinite said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And it is that upon which we base this entire teaching of metaphysics. There was an intentional idea from an intelligent, creative being, presence, energy, intelligence, that set an intention and said, "Let there be," and then the law responded, "And there is." And we're doing that all the time. We can look at a situation and say, "Let there be." Sometimes it works better than other times. Sometimes it takes a while to go through the evolutionary spiral till it comes back to the point where it looks good. But that is the creative process that we're always involved in, is the ability to look at the situation that's in front of us, the circumstance that we find ourselves in, and say, "Let there be whatever's next." That's really, really easy to say. How many people have found that that's really simple to do in practice? There's a little nuance, a little bit of technique that's involved in that. Yeah, and as I've talked about a lot, our senses, our five senses, are geared towards leading us to conclude that we are separate from the rest of the universe. I can touch, I can move myself, but I can't move other stuff the same way. All of my five senses tell me that I am separate and discrete and an independent unit. And my philosophy tells me that we are all one, we are all connected. And furthermore, that it's all good. Sometimes it doesn't look good. Sometimes it doesn't smell good. Sometimes it doesn't sound good or feel good. And whether it's something that I describe as good or something I describe as bad, first thing I get to do is say, yeah, that was my judgment. That was my evaluation of a situation that's going on. Because if it's bad for me, it might be good for somebody else. Who would rig a system that way? For it to be good for somebody but bad for somebody else? You rub your hands together. They're the two hands that you started with. Go ahead and give it a try. It's a little chilly in here. You start with a left hand and a right hand, and then you rub them together. And then what happens is you get some warmth. And the warmth wasn't there before. The friction lets us create something new. The friction lets us bring in a new energy into the situation. So when something's going wrong that we don't like, that we're battling against, when something comes up and it's forcing us to want to march or call the complaint department or whatever it is that we're going to do, instead of saying, oh, this is horrible, we can say this is an invitation. This is an invitation for me to rub up against my experience in a different way to bring about something different. This too is good, this too is God, this too is for me now, and I demand to see the blessing in it. And sometimes the friction is, in fact, blessing. And sometimes it's just uncomfortable. Sometimes it heats up too much, the muscles get weary, and we say, why do I have to be dealing with this? And we're always a choice. We get to deal with it, or we get to run away from it. And that's what we get to do in all of those situations. But and if we want to, we can just point at it and say that's bad and turn away from it. And that's a choice. And we get to do that. There are two stories that are coming up in my mind. I'm going to tell one. We started with sports. I'll continue with the sports one. So now that football season is almost over, one more day. Two. Baseball season, spring training is starting soon. So there's a story about a reporter, a sports reporter, rookie sports reporter, gets assigned to spring training. And he wants to do a story that's different than everybody else has done. They're all talking about the players and the team's going to be and all the rest of it. So he decides he's going to do a story on the umpires. And he wants to find out how the umpires can tell whether it's a ball or a strike. Because it's going, it's a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. They only have a fraction of a second. So he goes they have an umpire training camp. So he goes to umpire training camp, and the first day he gets there, and he finds a rookie umpire, who's been in the minor leagues, and this is his first year as a major league umpire. And he asks the guy if he talked to him. The guy says, sure. And he gets around to that question: how can you tell when you're calling balls and strikes? How can you tell if it's a strike? And the umpire says, just call it like it is. The guy's writing it down as a little. That's great. Okay, you just call it like it is. And it's so simple. It's so straightforward. It's so obvious. And that night, when he's at the hotel, he's putting a story. He says, there might be more to it than that. So the next day he goes back and he's like looking around. He's talking to the other umpires, and he finds somebody who's been an umpire for a while. He's got a few seasons, and he asks him the same question. And the guy gives him almost exactly the same answer. He says, I call it like I see it. Well, that's different. The first guy said he called it like it is. The one who's been doing this for a while, has a little bit more experience, said that he's calling it like he sees it. And he's acknowledging that the way he sees it might be different than the way somebody else would see it. But he is acknowledging that he's the umpire, so he's going to use that power to do that. And he goes and he's back in the hotel that night, and he's writing up the story. And he thinks that he mostly has it. But there might be something. So the next day he goes back, and he finds the veteran, the elder, the umpire that's been doing this longer than anybody else has been doing it. And he asks him the same question. How can you tell when the fastball's coming in if it's a ball or a strike? And the veteran umpire says, until I call it, it's nothing. One of the things that the team that wins the Super Bowl this afternoon needs more than anything else is a team that's almost as good as them to give them a run for their money. Because if either the Falcons or the Patriots were to take on a Sandlot team, at the local schoolyard, nobody'd care. It'd be a done deal. Of course they're going to win. It's not going to be interesting to watch. You're not going to sell tickets, and we're certainly not going to have a halftime show. So what we need is that entire process, that friction that's been going on for the entire season and for the seasons leading up to that, of people who are interested and invested and working and putting their energy in coming in number one. And we have two of them who want to come in number one. One was going to come in number two. And they are almost as important, and in many ways more important, than the number one team. Some of these teams have been to the Super Bowl a bunch of times. And between Super Bowls, they hone their craft. They work on their game. They practice. They come up with new ideas. They come up with new strategies. They figure out new ways that they can bring their best onto the field. Oh yeah, same for you. So as you're going through that expansion and contraction, as you're going through the cycle of joyous experience and learning opportunity, work on your game. How do you do that? Well, the first thing is, instead of deciding what it is you want to see in the world around you, decide how you want to feel when you have that in the world around you. Because if you're trying to move the pieces around outside, that's just a control issue. And by the time you get done with all that moving the pieces around, in my experience, I just feel tired. There may be some momentary glee in having actually finished it or accomplished whatever it is. But when I'm setting out to create something new, and I have an idea of what that newness is that I want to bring into the world, and I get quiet and I let that resonate with what in me is calling me to be doing that. How is it that I want to feel? Who do I want to be when I have this newness in my life? There's the question. When this good is in the world and in my life, who do I want to be? And then all the ideas of shortcuts and cheating and whatever other methods that we can use to move the pieces along go away. and we bring our attention back to being that love, to being that presence, to sharing our gifts, to being aware of what it is that we're bringing to it. On the upward evolutionary spiral that we are all on, when you come up to one of those parts that feels challenging, that's the time to stop and drop and pray. To look for the guidance. What is it that I want to have in my life? What is it that I want to bring into the world? How is it that I want to feel? How do I want to engage with this situation? Who am I in all of this? And from that place of awareness, that's where we say, let there be. And the law responds, and there is. When we do that with clarity, when we do that with intentionality, when we do that with openness, it works. And the more honest and connected we are when we start, the more powerful that result is going to show up in our lives. So as you're reading the newspaper, as you're being encouraged to call or fax your senators, or march, or whine, or ignore it, or whatever it is that you want to do, allow yourself to be aware that you are intending for something new to come into your life. When you're looking for a job, and suddenly there are two. The game changes when there are two. And what color is your parachute? It describes the job, the process of looking for a job as no, 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 yes. Well, up until this week, Joe thought the yes was going to be from somebody who wanted to offer her a job, and it turns out the yes is going to have to be for her to one of the two opportunities that have come along. Do not make an assumption that you know what the question is. Open yourself up to that good. And we get to hear next week which one's the best offer for Joe. I'm looking forward to that in glee. So whatever it is that you're looking for in your life, whatever you're inviting in, let go of the assumptions. Let go of the way you want the pieces to look in the world around you. Open yourself up to the good. Set the intention for that feeling. And that good is yours. It is at hand. And you deserve it. Because you are wonderful. So it is. Thank you.
So it is.